My name is Samantha Harlow. I didn't grow up knowing I'd one day own a multi-million-dollar company. I wasn't raised on luxury. I was raised on spreadsheets, legacy, and warnings. I was just 29 when my grandfather, Walter Harlow, passed away. He was the founder of Harlow Technologies, a company he built from a garage in 1975 and turned into a $25.6 million business before I could even ride a bike. The day of the will reading felt unreal. I remember the way my heart pounded when the lawyer read the words aloud. To my granddaughter Samantha, I leave 75% ownership of Harlow Technologies. Everyone in the room froze. Me, I just sat there, silent, stunned. He had prepared me for this, but I never thought it would really happen. He used to tell me, "Protect yourself, Sammy, especially when money is involved. People will smile at you while calculating how to take what's yours." Those words were more than a warning. They were his parting gift, more valuable than the company itself. And so I stayed silent about the company, about the inheritance. Even when I met the man I thought I'd marry, I didn't tell him. Not because I didn't love him, but because I wanted to know he loved me without a price tag. From the outside, I looked like any other 30-something professional. I lived in a modest downtown loft. I drove a used Audi. I brought my own lunch to work and never wore designer labels. No one suspected I was a multimillionaire. I kept my name off public company records. My email signature simply read, Operations Director, Harlow Technologies. No mention of CEO, no hints about my inheritance, no press, no posts. Even when I donated to charities, I asked to remain anonymous. Why? Because the moment people know what you have, they stop seeing who you are. They start calculating, judging, wanting, sometimes even loving you differently. When I met Jason Miller, a warm, funny fourth-grade teacher with messy hair and an honest smile, I told him I worked in tech. I manage investments, I said, which wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. And every time I had the chance to tell him more, something inside me hesitated. I wasn't ashamed of what I owned, but I was terrified of what it might cost me. There was a moment just before Jason proposed when I almost told him everything. We were watching the sunset on a quiet beach, his hand wrapped around mine, his voice trembling as he said, "Sam, I love you. I want to build a life with you. Will you marry me?" And in that split second, as the waves whispered behind us, I could hear my grandfather's voice in my head. Protect yourself, Sammy, especially when money is involved. Jason didn't know about the company. He didn't know I was worth millions. He thought I was just a smart, steady woman who worked in tech. And that's what made it real, because he loved me without the spotlight, without the brand, without the bank account. And so I smiled, tears in my eyes, and whispered, yes. But deep down, I knew this secret would either protect us or destroy us. Jason Miller didn't walk into my life like a storm. He arrived like sunlight, quiet, warm, and disarming. I met him at a charity gala for children's literacy. He wasn't one of the wealthy donors. He was a fourth-grade teacher, standing next to a painting one of his students had made. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said. She painted it after her dad came back from deployment. He wasn't trying to impress me. He wasn't performing. He was just present. Our first date was coffee at a quiet cafe. He talked about his students like they were his own children, each with stories, quirks, and dreams. Our second date was a hike through Morton Nature Preserve. We spent hours talking about books, childhood memories, and the strange grief of losing someone before you're ready. Jason's dad had abandoned him and Eleanor when he was 10. My parents had passed in a car accident when I was 16. We knew loss, but somehow, in each other's company, it didn't feel so heavy. And for the first time in years, I felt safe letting someone in. Meeting Eleanor felt less like a family introduction and more like walking into a job interview you didn't apply for. Jason had warned me that she could be a little intense. What he didn't say was that she could size you up like a loan officer deciding your worth. She greeted me at the door of her suburban home, a spotless two-bedroom, decorated with plastic-covered couches and framed pictures of Jason at every stage of life. "So, you're Samantha?" she said, eyeing me like a resume. "Jason says you work in investments. That must be lucrative." I smiled politely. "It can be, but I focus more on sustainable growth than quick profits." She tilted her head. Do you rent or own your place?" Jason coughed. "Mom, what? I'm just getting to know her." Throughout dinner, the questions kept coming. "What do your parents do? How much vacation time do you get? Does your company offer good retirement benefits?" It wasn't curiosity, it was calculation. Jason avoided eye contact. I smiled through tight lips. But inside, a quiet alarm started ringing. Not because she asked questions, but because she asked the kind of questions you only ask when you're planning something. It happened as I was helping clear the table. Jason had stepped out to take a call from one of his students' parents. Eleanor and I were alone in the kitchen, plates stacked, silverware clinking, tension quiet but sharp. She handed me a dish towel without looking at me, then said it. "You're just what Jason needs, someone with resources." My hands froze around the plate. It sounded like a compliment, but it wasn't, not really. It wasn't, "You're kind," or "You make him happy," or "I can see he loves you." It was about what I had. What I could provide. I forced a smile. "Jason has plenty of strength on his own." She looked at me then finally. "Strength doesn't pay off student loans, dear." She said it with a smile, but her eyes weren't smiling. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just a protective mother. This was a strategist. Most brides worry about the guest list or the dress. I was worried about my future mother-in-law hijacking the entire wedding. Eleanor didn't ask to help with the planning. She declared it. "Jason's my only child," she said. "I've dreamed of this day since he was born. Let me take care of things." And by take care, she meant overrule every one of my decisions. I wanted a small, intimate garden ceremony. She insisted on the Westlake Country Club. It's prestigious. You can afford it, right? I mean, you do work in investments. I wanted to write personal vows. She printed out traditional ones and emailed them to the pastor. And when Jason and I gently pushed back, she smiled sweetly and said, "Marriage is about sharing everything, dear, especially finances." That one line echoed in my head for days. Sharing everything, or handing it over. It was supposed to be a quick drop-off. Jason had left a form we needed to finalize our marriage license. I stopped by his apartment to leave it on his desk before heading to a meeting. Eleanor was there. She had a key. She said she was dropping off a homemade casserole. But what I found wasn't a warm, motherly gesture. It was her standing in Jason's home office, going through a folder I had left on the desk. Not just glancing, reading, flipping, analyzing. The folder contained investment statements, personal, not related to Harlow Technologies, but still private. When she saw me, she startled and fumbled. "Oh, I knocked these over while dusting. What a mess." The folder hadn't moved. The papers were in perfect order until her hands had disturbed them. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. I didn't ask why she thought it was okay to snoop through my financials. I just smiled and made a mental note. This woman isn't just overbearing. She's investigating me. The weather was perfect. Sunlight spilled through golden leaves. The breeze carried the faint scent of wildflowers. Everything looked beautiful, but inside me, something felt off. Jason stood at the altar, eyes filled with love, hands trembling as I walked toward him. And in that moment, I wanted to believe in forever. His vows were real. His voice cracked when he promised to stand by you, support you, and love you completely and forever. And I believed him. I truly did. But the secret still sat like a stone in my chest. I had planned to tell him during our honeymoon, when it would just be the two of us. No Eleanor, no interruptions. But still, I hesitated. Would he look at me the same? Would everything we built collapse once he knew? Then came the toast. Eleanor stood. She clinked her glass, her smile radiant, her words sharp. To Jason and Samantha, may they always share equally, especially the blessings. The room clapped. Jason smiled politely, but I felt it. That line wasn't a blessing. It was a warning. It was the morning after our wedding. I woke up to sunlight on the sheets and Jason's arms around me. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. We had just one plan for the day. Do nothing. Just rest, hike a little, maybe talk over wine by the lake. I had even decided tonight I'd tell him everything. Then Jason's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's my mom. She says there's a plumbing emergency at my place. Water everywhere. She needs us to come back right away. I blinked. She can't call a plumber. She says the building superintendent needs the tenant there. I'm sorry, Sam. We'll just check it out and come back after. My chest tightened. I didn't want to go. Not on the second day of our honeymoon. Not when I'd finally worked up the courage to tell him the truth. But I nodded. We packed quickly, left the cozy cabin behind. 40 minutes later, we pulled into the parking lot. No plumbers, no water trucks, no signs of any emergency. Jason looked confused. That's strange. I didn't answer, because deep down, I already knew this wasn't about plumbing. The moment we walked into Jason's apartment, I knew. No water on the floor, no dripping pipes, no scent of mold or chaos. But there was Eleanor, sitting upright on the couch like a queen expecting tribute. Next to her, a balding man in a gray suit, a young woman with a leather notary binder, and a stack of legal documents, laid out like a trap. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice sharp. Eleanor smiled politely. "I'm sorry for the little white lie about the plumbing, but this is actually a much more important emergency, a financial one." The man stood. "Curtis Dawson, attorney at law. We've prepared the appropriate post-marital paperwork." I didn't shake his hand. The woman opened her binder, revealing a notary seal. And Eleanor, she stood, picked up a pen and said sweetly, "Samantha, darling, now that you're part of our family, it's time we share everything, including Harlow Technologies." The air left my lungs. Jason's face twisted, shock, confusion, guilt. I stepped back, my voice low, controlled. "You brought a notary to my honeymoon." "No, sweetheart," Eleanor said softly. "We brought protection for Jason's future." I looked at the papers. They weren't just postnuptial forms. They were structured to transfer 50% of my company's equity to Jason and to a trust controlled by Eleanor. And that's when I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a hostile takeover, and I had married straight into it. I turned to Jason, eyes burning with a question I didn't want to ask but had to. "Did you know about this?" He didn't speak right away, didn't deny it, didn't protect me. He just hesitated. I knew Mom was worried about your finances," he said. "She thought you were hiding something. But I didn't know about this. Not the notary, not the paperwork." My heart cracked quietly. It wasn't the lie. It was the pause, the moment of calculation. "So you suspected me," I said softly, "and you said nothing?" "I didn't want to accuse you," he whispered. "I thought we'd talk about it after the wedding." After the wedding, when everything would be legally bound, when leaving would be harder. I looked at Eleanor, her arms folded. Triumphant. Jason didn't defend me. He didn't stand between me and the ambush. He let it happen. That was all I needed to know. I picked up my purse. My voice didn't shake. "I'm leaving." "Samantha, please," Jason called after me. "Don't go. We can fix this." But I was already at the door, because some betrayals don't need screaming. They only need silence. and one clean exit. That night, I called my lawyer. Then I called Katie. And then I cried like I hadn't cried in years. Not because I'd lost a husband, but because I'd nearly lost myself. The next morning, I sat across from Frank Thompson, my grandfather's lawyer, now mine. His expression was calm, but his eyes carried the sharpness of someone who'd seen too many families ruined by money. "We ran a background check," Frank said. "You were right to walk away." He slid a file across the table. Inside, bank records, debt statements, medical bills. Eleanor Miller owed over $380,000. Most of it came from a cancer diagnosis 5 years ago, treatments, surgeries, follow-ups. The rest, a second mortgage on her home, and private loans she took out to help Jason with college. She had been drowning for years, and somewhere along the way, she looked at my company and saw a lifeline. She told the investigator, Frank continued, and I quote, "I thought her company could solve everything. Everything. Her debt, her fear, her need for control. But she didn't ask. She orchestrated. She faked a plumbing emergency, brought a lawyer and a notary into our marriage. She tried to take what wasn't hers. And Jason, whether he knew the plan or not, he let it happen. And now I had a choice. Pursue legal action or protect my peace and move forward without vengeance. My grandfather prepared for war, even when all I wanted was peace. 3 years before he passed, he sat me down with Frank Thompson and laid out a strategy. "Don't wait for people to show their intentions," he warned. "Protect yourself first, then see who's still standing beside you." Thanks to him, Harlow Technologies was untouchable. My shares were locked into an irrevocable trust. Even I couldn't dissolve it without court action. No marriage, no manipulation could make that company theirs. Eleanor hadn't known that, and when she tried to take what wasn't hers, she didn't just fail, she exposed herself. And now I had leverage. I didn't file charges. I didn't scream on social media. I let my silence do the work. Through my lawyer, I sent Eleanor a formal letter, a list of non-negotiables. Sign a legal document renouncing any claim to Harlow Technologies or my personal assets now and forever. Agree to no contact about money unless requested. Undergo financial counseling and therapy. Jason and I would live separately for at least 90 days with no shared accounts while we explored whether this marriage had a future. Lastly, if Jason wanted to rebuild trust, he'd need to sign a post-nuptial agreement that confirmed he had no legal claim to the company ever. Frank slid the draft across the desk. "It's firm," he said, "but fair." So was I, because love without boundaries is just an invitation to be broken. 3 days later, Jason showed up outside my building unannounced. Hair unkempt, dark circles. He looked like he hadn't slept since I left. "Can we talk?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. We sat on the stone bench near the lobby fountain. He didn't touch me, didn't reach for my hand, just stared straight ahead like every word would break him. "I love you, Sam," he began, "and I know I failed you. Not by what I did, but by what I didn't stop." He paused, swallowed hard. I didn't want to believe my mom was capable of that, but she is, and I let her walk into our marriage with a notary. The shame in his voice wasn't performative. It was quiet, earnest. "I'm not asking you to forget," he said. "But if there's any part of you that still believes in us, I'll do anything." Then, for the first time, he looked at me. "I'll sign the postnup. I'll move out. I'll go to therapy. I'll set real boundaries with her. And if she ever crosses one again, she loses me," he finally exhaled. "But please, let me try." And for the first time in days, I didn't feel anger, just sorrow. And maybe a tiny spark of what we once had. 3 months, 90 days apart, no shared keys, no shared bed, only shared silence and the occasional email from a couples therapist. We agreed on the rules, and we followed them. Jason moved into a rental apartment on the other side of the city. He attended both individual and couples therapy faithfully. He journaled. He read Brené Brown. He even texted me once, "Shame is a quiet prison. I want out." I didn't respond, but I read it, twice. As for me, I focused on Harlow Technologies. We launched a new sustainability project in memory of my grandfather. I worked late, slept early, cried sometimes, but never regretted walking away. Healing wasn't pretty. It wasn't cinematic. It was boring, painful, real. Eleanor surprisingly kept her distance. According to Frank, she was in financial rehab, a hybrid therapy and restructuring program for people drowning in debt. She didn't reach out, not to me, not to Jason. Maybe for the first time in her life, she realized silence could be a form of respect. And maybe for the first time in mine, I wasn't afraid of starting over. On the 91st day, we met at Frank Thompson's office. Neutral ground. No rings, no illusions, just truth. The postnuptial agreement was already printed. 12 pages. Clear, binding. Jason read every line, and then he signed. No claims to Harlow Technologies, no access to my equity, my grandfather's trust, or its future revenue. No legal entitlement now or ever. He placed the pen down slowly, looked up at me not with defeat, but with clarity. Harlow isn't just your company, he said. It's your soul. And I won't ever ask you to cut yourself in half. I didn't expect to cry, but I did. Not from sadness, from recognition. This wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about boundaries, safety, integrity. Jason didn't reclaim power. He respected mine. Jason didn't ask to be let back in. He earned his way in. It started with a volunteer role at Harlow Technologies' youth outreach program, handing out flyers, shadowing interns. No salary, just commitment. He came early, stayed late, and never used the name CEO's husband. Within weeks, the staff called him Mr. J, and the kids loved him. One afternoon, I saw him kneeling on the floor teaching robotics to a group of 10-year-olds, smiling like a man who had found something sacred again. Over time, he earned a formal title, Director of Community Education. And one day, as we locked up the building, he looked at the Harlow sign, then at me. It's not just a company, Sam. It's a legacy, and I'm proud just to be a part of it. I didn't say anything, but I reached for his hand. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like rebuilding. It felt like becoming. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. No return address. Just one name in cursive, Eleanor. Inside was a letter and a neatly bound folder. The letter wasn't poetic. It wasn't begging. It was honest. Samantha, I was wrong. I mistook control for love and fear for protection. You didn't deserve what I did. Beneath the letter were scanned copies of her debts, medical bills, credit lines, personal loans, and at the very bottom, a signed legal declaration, notarized, final. I, Eleanor Margaret Miller, permanently waive any and all claims to the financial assets, holdings, or inheritance of Samantha Harlow or Harlow Technologies. For the first time, she gave back control without demanding something in return. That evening, I stared at the papers and I didn't feel victory. I felt release. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's recognizing when the threat is gone. We met at a garden bench, neutral, quiet, where truth felt safer than pride. Eleanor was thinner, softer in tone, but not broken, just real. She pulled something from her purse, a photo of my grandfather smiling in front of the Harlow Technologies ribbon cutting. He was right, she said, her voice low. Right to protect what he built, right to place his trust in you. I didn't speak. I didn't need to, she continued. You remind me of him, not because of the company, but because you never let anyone take your voice, not even me. There was no apology this time, no excuses, just recognition. That moment wasn't about forgiveness or resentment. It was about alignment, one woman finally acknowledging another. When she stood to leave, she smiled. You were never just the girl who married my son. You are the woman who kept her legacy whole. People think love means giving everything, But I've learned love isn't sacrifice, it's consent. It's saying, I choose you without losing me. Jason and I didn't go back to before. We built something new. We have boundaries now, clear ones. We talk about finances. We argue sometimes. And we don't pretend that love fixes everything. But here's what it does fix: loneliness, silence, the fear of being unseen in your own home. Some nights, Jason still reaches for my hand and whispers, "Thank you for giving me a second chance to get it right." And I smile, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Love without a lock isn't a risk, it's a freedom with promise. The greatest kind of love doesn't ask you to shrink yourself. It doesn't ask you to give up what you've built just to be accepted. If someone only wants your shine but not the struggle that made you you, you need to walk away. Protecting your peace, your legacy, your boundaries isn't selfish. It's the purest act of self-respect. And if love is real, it will never be threatened by truth. It will grow from it. So if you're watching this and you've ever been made to feel too much, remember, you are not too much. They were never enough. If this story spoke to you, if it reminded you to protect your worth, don't leave without subscribing. Here at Whispers of Life, we tell the stories that others stay silent about. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and join a community where truth is never too much to carry. Your voice matters here.